Um, so let's see if I can navigate this. Just a little bit by way of introduction. These are me and my first grader and third grader. We live in Missoula, but I am a Butte native and the child of two teachers. So I'm really excited to be able to visit with folks from OPI and just want to thank everybody who's out there teaching our kids. I have the really just honor of representing families involved with child and family services across the state. I supervise a unit of attorneys who represent parents, kids, guardians, and Indian custodians in cases involving child and family services. Those are called youth in need of care cases. You might also call them dependency and neglect or DN cases. And we're a busy office. We staff 56 counties, 22 judicial districts. We work in 51 district court judges' courtrooms. And in 2025, our staff opened cases for over 1,500 clients. So we are kind of the emergency room of legal services, I like to say. It's always busy. There's never a boring day in our world and keeps us on our toes. So for my 15 to 20 minutes, I thought I'd focus us a little bit on some law and policy just to kind of ground the work that we do, give you a little bit of data, and then talk about best practices. And I see in the participant list some folks who I've handled cases with, and they're probably chuckling about a defense attorney sharing best practices. But I do think I see a common thread in a lot of our work, and just have some ideas about how we can work together in our own silos to best serve families. So just to orientate us here, this is Title 41 is the Montana law on child abuse cases. It sets out some priorities that I think are really important for us to just kind of ground ourselves in. First and foremost is kids' safety. That has to guide all of our work. Next, the state recognizes the importance of family and family unity, that parents have a right to their kids and kids have a right to their families, and that we can do best when we can help families be together safe. It also prioritizes services for families, and we'll talk a little bit about that later, but it obligates child and family services to provide services to families so that they can be healthy and safe parents. And finally, it ensures the protection of kids' ethnic, cultural, and religious heritage. And we'll talk a little bit about ICWA, but it just ensures that kids have a right to their own faith traditions, their own cultural practices, and that just because a child is in foster care doesn't mean that they lose those rights. All right. Wanted to just kind of give a primer on ICWA because it's a significant proportion of our cases are cases involving Native American kids. So just big overview. In 1978, Congress passed the Indian Child Welfare Act. This was a federal law aimed at addressing the disproportionate removal of Native kids from their families. At that time, it was something like a quarter of every Native kids were removed from their families, and something like 85% of them ended up forever separated from their tribal communities. So ICWA is designed to be remedial to help repair some of the historical damage that we've done to Native communities. And it's really aimed at providing Native parents active efforts, like really involved services to address the reasons that they're involved with child and family services. And if kids can't be safely reunified with their parents, the goal is to keep them connected to their family and their tribal community. So federal law passed in 1978. Montana passed their own ICWA in 2023. So we have a state-specific ICWA here as well. All right, reunification. So what does that mean? Most of you probably know what this means. This means bringing families back together who've been separated. In most cases, the state is legally obligated to provide services aimed at reunifying those families. And those are referred to as active efforts in ICWA cases and reasonable efforts in non-ICWA cases. And those are really the meat and potatoes of our work, of the work of CFS, is to provide families the services that they need to address the reasons that they're involved. So, when I started doing this kind of work, my mom was like, wow, like this is why you went to law school, to defend child molesters and give them their kids back. And you know, I was happy to be able to report to her that overwhelming majority of our cases are not those kind of cases. Overwhelming majority of our cases are cases of neglect, which is still harmful. I don't mean to minimize that, but it's hopeful to me because we can work with people to address these kind of issues. So most of our cases involve families who are impacted by substance use, families that are struggling with mental illness, folks who are dealing with housing insecurity, and things like inadequate supervision and kind of unsanitary home situations. So that's really the vast majority of our work, is working with families impacted by those kind of circumstances. I'm giving you like 101 of Title 41 in 20 minutes. So just throwing a lot at you guys. I want to visit a little bit about placement though. Our state law recognizes that kids do best when they're with family. So it prioritizes children who have to be removed from their parents. It prioritizes placing them with their extended family. So this might be grandma, it might be their uncle and aunt, might be cousins, but we look at placing kids with family. And if not with family, we have something called fictive kin, which are relationships that kids had with people who might not be a blood relation, but who they have a close familial-like relation. So they're not placed with a stranger. And the latest data I had on this was something like 45% of our children are placed in kinship placements, which is great. Love to see that number just go up. State law also requires that kids be placed in what's called the least restrictive placement. So we can't warehouse kids in, group homes forever or out-of-state facilities if that's not necessary. The goal is to have them in a home-like setting, if at all possible. We also have to take into consideration their sibling attachments. I mean, the goal really is to place kids together with their siblings whenever possible. But if they can't be, we want to think about how can we make sure those kids can see each other often. Our placements need to consider a child's special needs if they have any, and they should be, whenever possible, within reasonable proximity to their home. And so they can remain in their school of origin, so they can see their parents, so that they can see their community. They can keep going to dance lessons, whatever, right? Like this is going to be hard enough for a kid. We want to make sure that we can minimize that hardship wherever possible. I'm also such a fast talker, so I'm trying to slow down and drink some tea to pace myself. The court reporter in one of the courts I used to work in a lot would yell at me to slow down. So another great reform that we've had recently is in 2023, the legislature said every kid in a youth in need of care case is entitled to their own independent attorney. So many of you are probably familiar with the CASA program, which does court-appointed special advocates. These are lay volunteers, they're non-lawyers, who investigate and write a report about what's in a child's best interest. They have a very important role in making recommendations on a child's best interest. That is separate and distinct from a child's attorney. The child's attorney's job is to tell the court what the child wants. And sometimes that's in their best interest, and sometimes it might not be. But they're there to say, this is what this youth wants and needs. This data is a little old and might be kind of hard to read, but what I want you to look at is the light yellow or the light blue line. You'll see kind of was just cruising along, and then in 2023, we get that big spike. That's when the legislature said every kid in care was entitled to an attorney. So before 2023, it was just really all kinds of ways of doing. Some courts never had an attorney for the kid. Some courts always had an attorney for the child. Some courts did it at like a kind of arbitrary age cutoff. Like if you're 8, you get an attorney, but if you're 7, you don't. They got rid of that. We have consistency across the state. Everybody gets an attorney. A little bit more data to throw at you. Permanency, there's a lot of CFS people in the room who are like, I know this, Kelly. But for people who don't, permanency is the objective of our cases. It's to get kids either safely back home or to get them into some other permanent placement, because I think we all recognize that just kind of languishing in the child welfare system is not what any of us want. So the good news is 62% of our cases resolve in reunification with a safe parent, which is awesome. 19% end in a guardianship. And so for folks who might not be familiar with a guardianship, it keeps parental rights intact, but it says somebody else is the legal guardian who's going to make decisions, medical, educational decisions, everyday kind of parenting decisions about a kid. We most commonly see these in cases involving family. So grandma might become a child's legal guardian, but does not have to adopt them. Adoption involves the termination of biological parents' rights and giving the adoptive parents all of the legal rights. And about 15% of our cases resolve in an adoption. And then sadly, 4% of our kids age out of the system. And this is something that everybody is always working on, reducing this number. I think we've made some forward strides in supporting kids who are aging out. There's access to a lot more services than there was historically, but nonetheless, it's a hard thing to age out of the foster care system. And I think we all want to see that number as low as possible. All right, removal, got to talk about removal. Removal is for emergencies only. That's a guiding principle of everyone who's involved here. We should only be removing kids when there's reason to believe that there's an immediate or apparent danger of harm. We recognize that removal is extremely damaging to families. It can be, and we only want to remove a kid if there are serious and immediate safety concerns. The court has said kind of generalized safety concerns are not enough. We got to have a reasonable belief that there's an imminent or immediate danger of harm to that child. And social science, backs this up. There's a growing body of research that removing kids from their primary caregiver and particularly placing them in stranger foster care, that can result in some pretty significant harm to kids. Involvement with the child welfare system, we're all trying to do our best, but the state's not a great parent. Involvement with our system has associations with increased odds of psychiatric and neurodevelopmental disorders, and that's even when compared to kids with similar life circumstances who weren't removed. So knowing that removal is often traumatic, what can we do? What can we do together to improve outcomes for families? I think the most important thing we can do is work together in our systems to support families upstream, to prevent entry into the child welfare system, to prevent mom from becoming my client, to prevent the student sitting in your classroom from becoming a foster care kid. There's lots of things we can do together in our own communities to work to prevent this. This is just a list of some of the things that I came up with. Things like home visiting services, I think is phenomenal. Parenting classes, connecting parents with mental health services, connecting people with respite providers, like both formal and informal. I just think a lot about the single parents out there trying to do everything, and just offering them a chance to have some respite can, I think, be really meaningful. Connecting families with housing advocates, helping ensure kids and parents have food security, connecting them with OPA to get them on SNAP and WIC, and God bless all the people doing the backpack programs in schools across this state. Those are all things we can do to help get upstream of the issues that lead to involvement with the child welfare system. Once kids are in it, though, I think we can do right by them by recognizing the diverse people in a child's world. Particularly if our goal is to reunify parents and kids, I think it's important that we include parents in our systems of interaction. So inviting biological parents to a parent-teacher conference, even though their kid might be in foster care, right? Because our goal is to have that kid go back to mom. So why would we not want mom to know how he's doing in school? So really trying to have a big point of view, an expansive viewpoint on who are this child's important people and how do I use them to support this child and this family. So that looks like parents, foster parents, the extended family, kids' teachers, counselors, their CPS worker. All of those people are going to play an important part. And to the extent we can kind of integrate our silos, I think we do well by these kids. So what does this look like on the ground? For CFS, of course, safety's got to be their priority. That guides all their decision making. I think also dignity, right? We're not a carceral system. We're not sending people to jail. Our system is not designed to punish. It's designed to rehabilitate and make safe parents when we can. And so I think CFS does right by parents when they are transparent with them about expectations, they communicate with them, and they treat them with dignity. Also support, right? Things there. CFS has legal obligations that, they do, but when I really see workers hear parents, talk to them, treat them as an individual, not just another person on their caseload, help them connect with services in real meaningful ways, not just, yeah, I sent that referral. It makes all the difference. What does it look like for my clients, the parents? First and foremost, they got to prioritize their kids, right? That has to center all of their decision making. And parents who are successful, this is what they do. They prioritize their kids, and that's the lens that they bring to every decision. They need to accept help. We all parents need help. I need help. I just have a bigger informal safety net than a lot of the parents I represent. So they've got to accept help, and they need to stay involved. The single most important factor for getting our parents reunified with their kids is having them show up for court, show up for their appointments with CFS, show up to their appointments with their attorney, and go see their providers. They got to stay involved. You can't put your head in the sand and expect to get your kid back. And then finally, what does it look like for schools? I think schools have such an important role to play and probably underutilized. It's important to not other kids in foster care, right? They're just a kid. Try to treat them as much like any other kid in your classroom as possible. Prioritize the inclusion of all the people, like I talked about on a couple slides ago. Talk to the social worker, see if you can invite mom or dad to events. Try to bring in all the people who are important in this kid's lives. And then also be thoughtful about differentiating poverty from neglect. So things like a kid showing up with shabby looking clothes or sleeping at grandma's periodically, that might be poverty, but it might not be neglect that crosses the safety threshold. So being mindful, I think, those can be hard to distinguish, but I think of poverty as like, it's the inability sometimes or the incapacity to provide for basic needs, whereas neglect is more like the unwillingness. So we have to be, those are nuanced concepts, and we definitely don't want to send kids into the foster care system who are just poor, who might be able to receive services outside of our world. So blasted through Title 41, you all are experts, and I just want to thank everybody for having me here today and letting me have a little platform to talk about my work.
Kelly, thank you so much. I learned so much from that. That was amazing. So thank you so much. And I just need to tell a little story. That was so fabulous. When I worked in corrections, that's how I got to know Kelly, and she would connect incarcerated parents with their children who were in foster care. And it was one of the most powerful things in my career of corrections. So you're doing amazing work, and we're honored to have you here today. Thank you so much, Kelly. And so we're going to do questions at the end. So I hope you can hang out to answer some questions at the end, Kelly.
I sure can. I'm looking forward to listening to Peyton.
Okay, me too. So that being said, Peyton Vining is here today, who is also another one of my educational inspirations. And she works for the Montana Kinship Navigator Program. Did I get that right, Peyton?
Yes, you did.
Okay, perfect. So I am honored to introduce you, and I will hand it over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Marissa, for inviting me. I see a lot of familiar names on here, so some of you might have heard this before, but yeah, like Marissa said, my name's Peyton. I am the program manager for the Montana Kinship Navigator Program. Just some history about the program, and then I'll talk about services. The program actually began in 2002. At the time, it was Grandparents Raising Grandchildren, so you might have heard of that program, but yeah, in 2020, we actually transformed into the Montana Kinship Navigator Program to provide services for a more broader group of kinship caregivers. So that's how the Kinship Navigator Program began. But to To define kinship, similarly to what Kelly said, we serve grandparents raising grandkids, aunts and uncles raising nieces and nephews. We've seen siblings raising siblings, and that fictive kin as well. You know, it's non-blood relationships, somebody that they consider family, but not through a blood relationship. So pretty much everything that falls under that definition of kinship in Montana. Similarly, we serve families, whether they are working with Child Family Services, you know, they are our #1 referral, but we also work with kinship families informally. So that can be they have no Child Family Service involvement at all. So we serve both formal families and informal families as well. We serve the whole state of Montana. And when I say we, I mean me. I am the only person within this program. So I serve all 56 counties. Additionally, we serve all of our tribal nations as well. So everybody is inclusive of this program. So what the Kinship Navigator program does, what are some of our services? So once a family is referred to us or comes to us, however they come to us, you know, we get connected with them, I get connected with them and talk about services, and then we address the needs. So services we help families with include, you know, #1, if they aren't working with Child Family Services, things such as private guardianship or power of attorney or private adoptionship. However, we can get that legal binding to that kiddo. The goal of our program is to promote permanency and safety within that kiddo. So, you know, we want to make sure that that kid's safe. So if they're working with Child Family Services, we help them, you know, understanding questions within that process. If they come to us informally, one of our big things that we help with is that legal binding. I can't fill out the paperwork, but I can help give them the paperwork. I can connect them with the court directly. You know, I will walk them through it and we'll do it step by step together. Unfortunately, just with the capacity of just being me in the program, I am not able to do the full thing right now. You know, that's something that we're working towards with some additional funding in the future, but that's our #1. You know, and then the second thing is the biggest thing our families see is a financial hardship. You know, it's different raising, you know, one mouth, let alone 2, 3, 4, however many kiddos they get in their house. And if they've already got kiddos in their house. So we see a lot of financial struggle with families. So, you know, we try to get them to connected to whatever public assistance they are eligible for, you know, SNAP, WIC, child only TANF, regular TANF. Of course, we want those kiddos on Medicaid, just whatever they're eligible for. You know, our baseline is that we are a resource and information referral program. So we want to give them the information and we want to get them connected to resources. So whatever financial eligibility they qualify for, we'll get them everything. We'll get them connected with OPA. You know, we can help support in those forms as well. So that's kind of the second thing, because that's, you know, a big thing that we see with those families is that financial aspect. So getting them connected to public assistance. And then some other things that we see a lot of time, you know, parent education. They're getting kiddos in a different era of parenting. So they've got a lot of questions or concerns. We do quarterly parent education at the kinship program. I am NTDC trained, so we are able to do that national training with those families every quarter. Vice versa, if they need it immediately, we can find other trainings, again, whether it's in their community or if they want to do it online. We'll connect them to whatever their concern is with their kiddo and answer their questions, help get that education they need. Childcare is another one we assist with, you know, finding childcare, and then of course the Best Beginning Scholarship. If they qualify, we can help them get connected to that. Just helping them get their resources for their new kiddos, for childcare. And then nutrition, you know, whatever is in their community. As you can hear me repeating, we love doing community resources. A lot of time it is directly in the community. So we want to find what is available to them in the community. So nutrition, housing, we can support with that to a capacity again. And just whatever supports they need the most. You know, it's a loaded question when a family gets referred to you and asking them, what do you need? It's a very loaded question. So we try to identify when those families come to us, what their top 2 to 3 needs are. Let's figure out what's most important. Is it getting some sort of legal binding? Is it applying for public assistance? Is it, I need childcare next week? So we want to figure out what are their top concerns. How can we support you? Let's get this started. Our thing is we want these families to be sustainable. We can help you with everything, but we want you in the end to be able to do it on your own, with a limited guidance that you need. So we get them started, we get everything they need, we want them to succeed, and then we want them to be able to do it on their own as well. So that's kind of a rundown of what services we provide. Again, it really is just family to family, case to case, just when they come to us, what they need the most. In addition, our program does have some additional funding in two different forms. One is a one-time emergency funding if a family needs gas, or they can't afford groceries that month, or if we ever get winter, if they need winter clothes, boots, snow pants, stuff like that that they can't afford because of their income limitations, we can do a one-time emergency funding for that. Similarly, if a family is facing eviction or their power is about to get shut off, we do have a little bit more funding for that. Anything that will displace that child from their home, we can help support with. Again, it has to be very emergency. It cannot be like, I just can't pay rent this month because I bought, a new car or tires or something. It has to be something that will displace that child from the home, because we want to keep that kiddo in the home. We do have that funding to be able to support families in that capacity as well. So quite a broad range of services. It's all very dependent on the family, what they need. Sometimes families just come to the program just to hear what we offer, and they may already be receiving all of that, which is great. In that aspect, then we're just a ear for them to talk to. I've had families that are like, I need a personal opinion other than mine or my husband's or my wife's. I just want to talk to somebody as well. It's a lot. It's an overwhelming feeling for these families. So a lot of times I've just been an ear for people to come and talk to as well. We care about the kiddo, but we care about the caregiver just as much. So while we are supporting the kids, we're also supporting the caregiver. The whole family as a whole, we can get resources for. Our program is based out of Montana State University Extension. If you have not heard of MSU Extension, we have extension agents in every county across the state. A lot of them are 4-H and agriculture based, but we do have some family and consumer sciences in our different counties. So that is a great benefit for me when I get a family from a county, a very small county, where I don't know all of the resources, and they say they need a car seat or they need clothes or they just want somebody else to talk to. Then I can connect with my agent in that county and just ask, hey, I've got a family. Do you know of any resources, or a parent that they can connect with to get clothes or something like that? So I'm very blessed in that nature that I do have somebody in every county that I can connect with that knows that county better than me, because obviously I don't know every service in every county. But that's how service provision goes. To discuss how to refer a family or how families come to the program and what that looks like is a couple of different ways. So a lot of our informal families will find our website and they can put an application on our website, which I'll include in the chat. There's a spot on our website that they can put in their information with a spot that says, I am caring for my granddaughter and need information, whatnot. So they can submit on the website. My information is also on the website. If a family wants to call or email, they're more than welcome to. You guys as partners, how we get different referrals, our most common one is that if you're going to refer a family, you have to have consent from that family to provide their information with me. Obviously, that's common across most programs, but you can get, their phone number, their email, whatever their preferred way of contact is. Some families like to text, some families only have a home phone. So you can collect their contact information, again, with their consent and then provide it to me, letting them know, Peyton from the kinship program is going to reach out to you to provide information. Vice versa, we have an informed consent form, which I will provide to Marissa. Marissa, if you have the ability to email that out to everybody, that way you can fill it out with them while you have them in person. Same thing, it just asks for their name, phone number, email, how they are preferred to be contacted. And then you can email that over to me as well, and then I will reach out. And then, of course, you can always provide that family with my information and put the ball in their court and say, if you're ready right now, go ahead and call her. If you're not ready right now, when you are ready, call her. We really take it to whatever best fits that family. A lot of times, like I said, our number one referral is Child Family Services. You guys just email me that family's information with a little bit about their situation, and then I reach out to them. So it really is whatever works best for you and whatever works best for them. Again, make sure that you have their consent for me to contact them so that I'm not calling them and they're like, who are you? How did you get my information? And that after you refer them to me, then I get in contact with them, talk about the program. If they would like to enroll, they can. If they're not ready, they don't have to. I'm not going to force it on anybody. And then service provision obviously starts after that. And we provide a case management option to all families. So, after that initial contact, we follow up at certain times points to check in. How are things going? Were you able to get SNAP? Were you able to get TANF? Did you get that guardianship? Are we in the process? How can I continue to support you? We really value our program on that relationship building. We don't want to be just another phone number in their book of phone numbers. We want to be, oh, hey, Peyton, like we're doing great. Or, something happens. Hey, I really need help. We want to be that support person for them. We want to continue to create relationships. Again, our goal is to make sure that they're self-sustainable. So we just continue to follow up, check in. How's it going? Are there new challenges that you are facing that has come up in the past, couple of weeks that we need to address now? So just a lot of that relationship building comes with that as well. So that's kind of the kinship program. Our services, we can't place kiddos, so our services to full capacity is once that kiddo is within the home, is when we can provide full services. We get a lot of calls and questions about, situations outside of that, but that's our service provision. That's how to refer families to us. I partner with state programs. I partner with nonprofit programs. I'm really wanting to get in the schools this year, because we see a lot of that stuff happen within schools, that the kinship families. So, would love to connect in the schools big this year and just continue to support families across the state and partner with programs. That's one of our big thing is we can't support these families without our partnerships. And so by providing similar resources and making sure that everybody is on the same page, we're all connected, we know what is going on, where this family is at, and just maintaining a partnership is, that's the best way that we can help support these families in the long run. So I'm a fast talker as well, Kelly. So, that's the kinship program in a whole. Marissa, I know you've heard this speech several times. Is there anything I'm missing or, that you want me to touch on?
I love the speech. I could hear it all the time. I just think it's really amazing. And I think a lot of people that need it benefit from this program. And I have to say, and I didn't even know about this program till I came to the Office of Public Instruction. So I really wanted people to know the amazing things that you're doing. So I love it. But on that note, are there any questions for Kelly or Peyton?
Peyton, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you guys still do the caregiver kind of retreats or like conferences, the gatherings for caregivers in different communities?
Yeah, so that's actually a separate program
Oh,
from
okay.
the Kinship Navigator program. I'm actually the program manager for that program as well. It is a caregiver respite retreat program, so it's not specific for kinship caregivers, but of course I promote it for kinship caregivers.
Yeah.
But yeah, we travel across Montana. We've been to, gosh, I think now in our 5th year, over almost 40 counties across Montana, and we provide a full day of respite for caregivers. And what our respite is a day of activity. So we do like, we made soap one year and we talked about how to just take care of yourself, because we know that you are a better caregiver when you take care of yourself. You know, it's the age old saying of you've got to fill your cup up before you can fill somebody else's cup up. So we do, that is also on the Montana State University. If you go to MSU's website and type in respite retreat, it's its own separate page and it has the locations where we're going to be. We did just run out of funding in December, so we are currently applying for more funding, which we should know by in July. So we're actually not traveling this spring. We'll try to do 12 counties in the fall and the spring, but yes, that is another program I am heavily involved in, is the Caregiver Respite Retreat. Like I said, it's got a separate web page. If you guys are interested, go check out locations we've been, locations we will go to. Yes, thank you for providing that, Justine.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed you get funding. That's great.
Yeah, and we're very hopeful we have, just because of how much success we had in our 5 years of our initial funding. It's just getting the okay to start doing again. So yeah, hopefully starting this summer we'll be up and traveling again. But great question. I'm glad you brought that up.
I have a question. If anyone wants to get involved in the kinship program or uh, more involved, how can they do that?
So a lot of like our peer involvement, what we are looking for right now is support group leaders. Our program, like I said, started in 2002, and for the 18 years it ran before the kinship program, it was all support groups. So we had support groups across all of Montana. Obviously, COVID hit, support groups ceased to exist or went online. Post-COVID, people were having a hard time getting enrollments. You know, I even had an online support group and was getting 0 people every month, so I ended up not doing it anymore. But you know, it's a common question I get a lot now from families is, I'm ready to be involved in support groups again. And what we need now is just support group leaders. Obviously, I can't do it in every county in person, but you know, if that's something you're willing to do, we would be able, I've got a support group manual. I've got community connections that you can partner with. You know, if you're like, I can't lead it every month, well, there might be somebody else who you can switch off every month. Funding opportunities. That's our biggest how to get involved with the kinship program. Obviously, being a partner is just the big one, and connecting with me about what resources you provide, how we can support this family, you know, in a side-by-side connection. But specifically kinship program wise, yeah, it's being a peer leader in your community, or you know, partnering for us, like Jen Daniels and I talked about doing a bed drive, maybe, because we know beds is something that families struggle to get, especially when there's 2-3 kids placed with a family. So just any ideas you have on how to partner is just a partnership enough, you know, how we can support these families. But yeah, that's how you can get involved in the program and how we can connect.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Peyton, if they
Any-
want to get,
Go ahead, Natalie.
just gonna, if I missed this, I apologize, but just wondering if you can share your contact information so that people will be able to get in touch with you when they need your services.
Yes, I will put it in the chat, and I'm glad you said something because I like say it and then I always forget. I also send out material packets, so hard copies of our trifold pamphlets, magnets, business cards. If you have families coming in and out of your office all the time, I know a lot of you already have some of this, but it's nice to have, you know, something on paper to give a family to that says, you know, this is the resources, this is who to call, this is what they provide. So if you want a material packet, please email me. Let me know you want a material packet and a good address to send it to, and I'd be more than happy to send it out. But yes, I will put my contact information in the chat right now.
Perfect. Thanks, Peyton.
Yeah.
So I have one more question for Kelly before we leave. But Kelly, when families come into your system, are they randomly assigned an attorney, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question, Marissa. So if CFS removes a child, they notify we have a hotline intake. They notify us within 24 hours and they provide us names, dates of birth. Our staff opens a case, and we open cases by county. And our managing attorneys run a conflict check. So sometimes we've represented a parent before, and so then we always represent that parent again because of professional rules. If we haven't represented anybody, I typically ask my unit to take the parent who the child was removed from, because it's hard to generalize, but that's typically the more challenging case that's going to take more time. But I also believe in the benefits of a mixed practice. So, historically people would only represent parents or only represent kids. And I think that puts blinders on our judgments. So I now like our attorneys to have a mixed practice of some representations of youth and some representation of parents. That was probably more detail than you need for your actual question, but you will be assigned an attorney who works in a pod of counties around you. So like if you're in Missoula County, the attorney in my office who would staff that is a man named Graham Cobb. He represents parents in Missoula, Mineral, and Ravalli County. If you got a case in Butte, that attorney also works in Anaconda and Beaverhead. So we're kind of like regional hubs. The goal really is to have somebody as local as possible, but it's a big state. And, like if you end up with a case in Sheridan County, our closest attorneys are in like Billings. So the volume's not big enough to justify having a full-time employee up in the northeastern corner. So there's definitely challenges to providing access to legal services in rural Montana. And we only take one party to the case, right? So like if we represent mom, we can't represent dad or the kid. And so we have a panel of contract attorneys who we pay an hourly rate to, who also represent parties in the case.
Is there a time limit on how long you represent them, or?
Yeah, we represent them from the time of removal until the case is dismissed.
Okay.
So sometimes I ran our numbers before today's session. Our average length is 15 months. But there's some cases, if you represent a youth who's maybe 12 when the department gets involved and that child might be in care for a long time, you could end up representing that kid for 6 years. So sometimes these relationships are really, long and important.
Wow, thank you so much, Kelly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions before I just do a couple of announcements? Okay. If you think of anything, you can always get a hold of any of us and we're happy to answer them. One thing I just want to talk about is that the Governor's Office of Community Service, Serve Montana, has decided to extend the deadline for their Youth Serve Montana scholarships through February 17th. And they are currently 15 to 20 applicants short to award the 90 scholarships they have for this year. So if you want any more information, please reach out to Christy Hendricks on that. And also, its scholarship time deadline is March 1st, and the Foster Care Summit applications open March 2nd. So the Foster Care Summit, I think, is going to be really amazing, as it always is. But this year it's in Dillon, and they have a lot of neat things planned. And it's just such a great experience for students that are in foster care. One other thing is that our high-tiered community of practice is going to be in Great Falls, April 27th through 29th. It's going to be a wonderful couple of 2-3 days. of supports in the community and at the state level to support staff and educators that work with students in foster care, homeless students, neglected, delinquent, students that are in secure facilities, correctional facilities. So Justine and I have been working really hard to get a good agenda together. And if you would like a copy of the agenda or a registration form, please put your email in the chat or get a hold of us and we will reach out to you because we would love to have you there. And lastly, thank you so much, all of you, for the hard work that you do and for joining us today. I know that you're busy and that your hard work does not go unnoticed. And next month, I don't know if I'm exactly right, but next month we will be focusing on special education and how that looks, how special education looks and what the laws are and the regulations for kids that are in foster care and homeless students. So I think it's going to be really informational and beneficial. So I think Justine has put everything in the chat for the community of practice and for our next lunch and learn. So I think that's everything. Have a wonderful Thursday. Enjoy this wintry, blustery weather out there. I just don't know what to say, but it's beautiful here in Helena today. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next month. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Marissa.